Welcome to the Heartification podcast, where I interview people on how art has affected their lives and what it means to them. Art has a very special place in my life. It not only makes me feel happy, but it allows me to make others feel special. This podcast is all about how art has made an impact on others' lives, for all ages, all backgrounds, and all walks of life. You can find more about this podcast guest in my show notes. Without further ado, let's welcome my next guest. He is a 2013 world champion and a 2014 Sochi Paralympic Medalist in sledge hockey. Please welcome my next guest, Kevin Rempel.
Hey, what's going on?
Yeah, thank you so much for being on my podcast. So the first question I always ask is, how do you define art?
Creative expression. To me, art is creative expression. I feel art has shown up most of my life in my earlier years when I rode dirt bikes. We always would be riding and just think about the style that we have when we do jumps and such was our form of expressing ourselves. And I've never wanted to be a painter or a musician in any way, but through skateboarding, BMX, or dirt bikes, those were different ways that I would express myself through art, which was creative expression to me.
Yeah, definitely. I totally agree. Like, my definition of art is like any way you're able to express yourself. And that can be like in any form, like painting, singing. And those are just like, the first things that people think of. But it can be anything as long as you're expressing yourself.
Yeah, like it could be, cooking. It could be gardening. It could be like the way that you style your vehicle with like neon lights. There's all kinds of different ways.
Yeah, exactly. And what art forms are you exposed to?
Am I exposed to? Well, I can't think of anything that's like prominent in my life today. Well, I mean, I guess you could say speaking. I mean, I'm a keynote speaker, so that's another way. Like social media is an example. Like when I share my story, if I'm on a stage in person on a platform, or if I'm on a Zoom call, or if it's through making a 60-second video on social media to try and convey a message to your audience, like that's another form of creative expression. So in my day-to-day life, that would be probably what's around me the most is practicing that in my life, in my career, but also like connecting with other speakers and learning about how they do it.
Yeah, definitely. That's awesome. And after your motorcycle accident, how did your life change from a creative point of view?
I was not able to dirt bike anymore. So for the listeners who don't know the full story, I broke my back 15 years ago on my motorcycle and was paralyzed. Fortunately, I did learn how to walk again. However, though I can walk, I can't ride a bicycle. I could dirt bike, but I couldn't jump. I can't skateboard. I can't snowboard, those things that I used to do. So that's how things really changed for me. And to be honest with you, it's definitely been something that I miss tremendously. It's funny talking about it because I don't ever talk about it, but it absolutely has significantly impacted my life because I haven't yet found, other than sledge hockey, anything remotely close to expressing myself the way that bikes and skateboards and snowboards did for me years ago.
Yeah, definitely. There's always that one thing that people love doing. And, when you don't do that anymore, it kind of feels like some piece of you is not there.
Yeah. I'll just add to that, just as I said it out loud, when you asked like what kind of art is around me today, like sledge, in addition to speaking, sledge hockey is another form of creative expression. Like living with a disability myself, I have both my legs still, but especially when you take someone who might be a single or double-legged amputee, or just anyone that has a disability and you get on the ice and play sledge hockey. Again, for the listeners who don't know what that is, it's the Paralympic sport where you play hockey sitting down and you pull yourself around using your arms. Is that when you play sledge hockey or any Paralympic sport, that is a way that people with disabilities can creatively express themselves, because the sport vehicle, like whether that's a wheelchair basketball chair, or rugby, or sitting volleyball, whatever it is, like you get to express yourself in your body and in ways that you may not otherwise or have the ability to. So Sledge hockey is another way that art continues to show up in my life.
Yeah, definitely. That's amazing. And how did creativity play a role in your life after your accident?
Well, I got into public speaking because of my accident, just from having a story of perseverance and such. People asked me to get on stage. So that's something that stemmed from the accident. Again, sledge hockey as well. Like I would never have been in the sport otherwise. So the two things that are most prominent in my life today are entirely a result of my accident. But beyond that, no, I can't think of what else comes to mind at the moment.
That's fine. And do you see sledge hockey as an art form in some ways? And if so, why?
Absolutely. I mean, we just touched on that a minute ago. So I would probably just be repeating what I just said, but sledge hockey absolutely is. Like I said, it gives freedom to people with disabilities to express themselves in ways that they may not otherwise.
Yeah, exactly. And I love how there's like different sports where people with disabilities and illnesses can still play the sports that they love. If someone was paralyzed and they couldn't play hockey anymore, there's still, sledge hockey that they can play, and they can keep doing what they love and expressing themselves, which I think is awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, I mean, if sledge hockey wasn't there, I would have done something else. Like I never played basketball as a kid, but playing in a wheelchair to play wheelchair basketball is actually still a lot of fun. So there's more ways than there ever was in order for us to adapt. And it just takes time to like get out there and try it. And once you try, you might fall in love with it.
Yeah, definitely. And in your journey to get your gold medal in sledge hockey, did art or creativity play a role in any way?
I mean, another example I could share, it was actually not something that stands out on my journey to the goal. Like, I mean, I can speak to, moments on ice, being creative, like with different maneuvers, different plays, like learning how to become more fluid with the sled, like the same way a musician would feel confident in their voice or playing an instrument when they're on stage. The more you feel comfortable with your device that you're working with, the more you start to express yourself. So there's a lot of stuff like that happened along the way. But another thing that stands out for me is like when I was done playing with Team Canada, that I wanted to help educate people about the sport. And so I created instructional videos on how to play sledge hockey, because that wasn't then, it hadn't been done at that time. It's still, nobody else has done it. So when I created instructional videos, that was another way for me to express my creativity that I would have done through motocross. Just recording yourself playing the sport you love. And it was fun because I got to work with the director, work with the editor to create something that you had a vision for and that you're proud of, that other people get to enjoy.
Yeah, definitely. I love that. And do you see speaking as an art form? And if so, why?
Yeah. Again, going back to what we said, like, it's, it's expressing yourself. You're sharing personal stories when you're on stage. So you get to choose what you share. You get to choose how deep you share those stories. You get to, teach others the lessons. So that's similar to in the form of art. Let's say, you have a vision, you get to share the beauty, your vision for what this thing represents to you. Well, that can be similar to a life lesson that comes out of hardship that you share in your story when you're speaking on stage. So there's so many ways it can go. Just like telling a joke. It's like laughing at something that may not seem funny, but finding the humor in the tragedy. Living with a disability, like that's how many of us get through challenging times, is we laugh at ourselves. So it's another way of expressing yourself through speaking, is finding the lessons, finding the humor, and trying to teach those to others.
Yeah, that's awesome. And, I think when you're speaking and you're expressing yourself, your audience can connect with what you're saying. And, they can relate to what you're saying to their own lives in any way. And that can go from, any speaking topic as long as like speaking from your heart and like expressing yourself, because then people will relate to you.
Absolutely. You nailed it.
And what creative things do you do when you're coaching others?
My favorite thing is to teach using my iPad. So in our virtual world here, most people are familiar with seeing a number of PowerPoint slides go across the screen, which can get pretty mundane and boring. And one of the coaches that I work with, just through his online course, his name's Taki Moore. He teaches using his iPad to draw. So you're drawing models, you're drawing shapes, you're writing on screen for people to follow along. And it's not like a unique talent because other people can do that as well. But it's like, that's my way of standing out in the speaking world these days. And that's my way to be creative as well, is that people get to like engage different, both visually and mentally. They're stimulated by seeing that on the screen when we do a Zoom workshop or a keynote or a coaching call. And that's my favorite way to be different and be creative these days.
Yeah, exactly. And, being creative is the thing that will attract people to what you're doing, because as you said, like most people just do like PowerPoint slides and presentations, and it gets boring after a while. But when you're actually drawing things out, people are interested and they're like, oh, what's going to happen next? And they're not bored just looking at one slide after another.
Yeah, 100%. Like, it doesn't take much to stand out in this virtual world.
Yeah, definitely. There's so many different like apps nowadays, and it's just so many possibilities.
Yeah.
And I see writing as an art form. So do you feel you were able to express yourself when you were writing your book?
Yeah, 100%. In my book I wrote titled Still Standing, When You Have Every Reason to Give Up, Keep Going. In the book, I shared stories that I have not and will not share on stage. I share stuff that's a lot more deeper, darker truth. Again, bringing perspective and connection with the reader. And over the years, one of my most powerful, to this day, forever, one of the most powerful ways of dealing with mental health challenges or simply goal setting, understanding your own thoughts and behaviors, is to write your thoughts down. Like through cognitive behavioral therapy is how I've maintained my well-being, got myself out of the gutter. And even if you're expressing negative thoughts, you're still being creative to let that out. So writing in any form to me is extremely powerful and extremely creative.
Yeah, definitely. And, we're going to talk about this in the next question, but art can be very therapeutic, and there's art therapy, and it's used as a way to help people get through things. And like, as you're saying, like writing, I think is a very popular one. And, people, when they're sad or even happy, they'll write in their notepad or whatever. And, kids like had their diaries or whatever, and they'll write about their day or write about special things that happened in their life. So writing, is a great way to express yourself.
Yep, absolutely. And just, that's how books are started. People just start writing for the fun of it. That's how songs are written. People just start writing for the fun of it. And it's just starting to get it out of you instead of holding it in.
Yeah, exactly. And art can be therapeutic, and it can help people through difficult situations. So has art ever helped you through a difficult situation?
Again, going back to what we just said, like with writing, like dealing with depression and just goal setting, like writing's been the way for me through those situations more than anything else. I've said this before on interviews, I keep my Olympic medal out in the open around my house, but I keep my personal journals in my home safe, because the journals are what helped me get to the medal. The journals are the hard work. Like, not that the medal is easily replaceable by any means, or maybe can never be replaced, but my journals, I also know that I can never replace.
Yeah, definitely. That's awesome. And are you attracted to any particular artist?
In the sports world, there's definitely athletes with style that I find, again, from their creative standpoint about how they can maneuver their body or their machine, and that's a long list. I mean, that goes from like Tony Hawk to Matt Hoffman to Travis Pastrana. Like there's so many different action sports athletes that I enjoy following for that way. I mean, there's even like Ken Block, who's in rally car racing, and these guys that not only are great athletes, but then they build brands, they build clothing brands, for example, and then they express themselves through that way. So there's not one person that stands out for me, but any number of athletes or entrepreneurs as well. Like entrepreneurship is another form of expression. Like that's why I like being an entrepreneur. Get to run my business, call it what I want, design it the way I want, and that's another form of expression. So any entrepreneur, anybody that's got the creativity to like express who they are, those are the people I like looking up to.
Yeah, definitely. That's awesome. And are you attracted to any particular art form?
I would still be leaning on sports, probably. Like I appreciate paintings, but paintings don't get me excited. I would say, maybe like music, I like rap music a lot, like rap hip hop. So that form of art, like I wish I could think like a rapper does, or a hip hop artist does, to like write lyrics that work with music today, especially. So that's something that I'm attracted to, in addition to like the sports world.
Yeah, definitely. That's amazing. And my heartification project is all about giving back to the community. So how do you give back to the community?
So a couple different ways, when we can do community or like in-person events, my team building program, the Sledge Hockey Experience, we've been raising money to buy sleds for kids with disabilities for a number of years. So before COVID came around, we raised like 32,000 or 34,000, bought 32 sleds for kids.
Wow.
I definitely do a select number of speaking events per year pro bono. I try to do things like our interview as well as much as possible, like just jump on podcasts, like share, lend my story to someone or a platform just to, it's not always about money. You never know who's going to be listening, and may never meet that person either, but just by hearing a story, it can help change someone's life. So those are a few different ways that I like to give back.
Yeah, that's awesome. And how would you like people to get in touch with you?
Simplest way, I try to make everything easy. So kevinrempel.com or Kevin@KevinRempel is my email, and @KevinRempel on Instagram or Facebook.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for being on my podcast.
You got it.
Thank you for listening to this podcast. Remember, if you want to find out more about this guest, please go to my show notes where I have all the links needed. If you enjoyed this podcast, please subscribe to my podcast series and help me by sharing it, leaving a rating, and a comment. I hope you join me on my next podcast. Bye for now.